Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, January 27th, 9 a.m. Eastern. We're doing a public live stream here just to show a little bit of insight of what we do with the chart guys every morning, and we picked a good morning for it with a ton of volatility. So I'm going to give a very quick, dumbed-down overview of what's going on before we look at the market and look at the charts. So essentially over the weekend, news comes out of China. They've got an AI model, DeepSeek. They're saying that it requires way less chips, way less power, and it's way more powerful than ChatGPT and things that we currently have. So semis are taking a big hit. They're dragging down the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ is dragging down the S&P 500. And the big questions are, number one, is China lying? Did they use more chips than they're alluding to? Is this an overreaction? So that's the narrative that's going on right now in terms of what the market is trying to figure out. It's essentially a sucker punch of news, and now the market's got to sort itself out a bit. And some of what is going on, people are saying this seems like a bit of an overreaction, but we have to keep in mind what has led up to this. And to end last week, we had a bullish announcement for Trump, $500 billion going into AI, and that was an extremely bullish thing that led to a lot of longs jumping in with leverage to the semiconductors. And so if you're going to wake up and NVDA is going to be down 10%, there's liquidations that are going on here. This is a bit of a long squeeze because the preceding action just days ago was such a bullish sentiment, and the charts were bullish. So we have to keep in mind that's what's going on as well, and that can definitely magnify what some feel may be an overreaction. But as we look around the market right now, we've got the healthcare sector is green, the energy sector is very slightly down, and the financial sector is very slightly down. So it is, at this point, definitely specific to semiconductors, some of the big tech names, which we'll look at. And on top of all this, we've got a big fundamental week with the FOMC Wednesday afternoon, and of course the Super Bowl week of earnings with so many of the big tech NASDAQ names reporting. So it's going to be a volatile week, we know that much. And now we look at the charts, and we've got a double top at the all-time high for ES, and this is where we're looking at the S&P 500 futures is so important because SPY hit a new all-time high and the futures did not. And I was on the verge of exiting a good chunk of my hedge last week, and I kept my hedge in because we didn't break resistance. And so I exited a third of my NASDAQ hedge this morning at 7 a.m. just to trim a bit into the extremes, and definitely going to keep a solid chunk of that hedge as we are now trading range bound again in the market. And again, just a reminder, when you go straight up or straight down and do not build support and resistance along the way, the retracements are more significant, or can be more often than not. They are more significant. So that's on the 5-minute time frame, the daily time frame, wherever it happens. So just keep that in mind when you are watching stair-step moves. So all that said, are there any major red flags for the S&P 500? No, not at this point. We would have to break. Look, I mean, it's just such a clear base of support from the last bunch of months. That would have to break. And with where we stand right now, we are right in the middle of this range. Pretty much right in the middle. So we have to see what the FOMC reaction is. We have to see what the earnings reactions are. But we'll zoom in just a bit here. We're going to keep looking at some of the zoomed out aspects of the market, and then we'll look at some individual names and, of course, semiconductors. But NASDAQ was weaker, as we know. And again, this recent low held initially. That's the most important support level. The NASDAQ did not get as close to its all-time high. We are still range bound here. And so this is a very key support level. And again, earnings are going to play a major part as to whether this support level can hold or not. Right now, what we have going on is the hourly oversold bounce is underway. And we know that an hourly lower high is the most likely result of this bounce. So again, just a zoomed out version of what we're looking at this morning. Patient bears are waiting to short hourly lower highs. And at this point, if I'm a patient bull, I'm waiting to scout an hourly higher low, considering we've already seen a pretty solid bounce. Aggressive bulls are going to be looking for entries early on. I'm not going to be aggressive today. I'm also doing a bit of traveling later this week to visit some family and friends, so nice time in there. But again, with all the fundamental stuff going on, for me, that generally means pumping the brakes a little bit and not having any large positions that are subject to fundamental reactions, especially earnings after hours. So aggressive bears scouting an hourly low or high on the morning. Patient bulls will be waiting to scout an hourly high or low. And pre-market levels are definitely very important on the indices as well as individual names. Semiconductors did hold support initially. So again, remember this daily time frame for SMH. We have this support zone that has been holding for months. This is 3 to 4 months of support. And pre-market, we got down very close to that zone, and we are currently above it. So again, if we're going to see any kind of major weakness in semis, this support zone will need to break. Bitcoin also got a bearish reaction, and this was, in hindsight, not surprising in the sense that futures opened, the NASDAQ dropped, and Bitcoin dropped hard with it. That said, Bitcoin, we're still watching the tightening weekly time frame, essentially a double top at the all-time high. Weekly EMA 12 is a key support, and we know anything above 89,000 is a weekly higher low. So for me, the red flag for Bitcoin bulls will come longer term if we lose weekly EMA 12. If it holds, there's no red flags. It's just a higher low. So keeping an eye on that level very closely. As far as the dollar, we've seen the dollar weaken a good bit the last couple of weeks. Bears will need to confirm a weekly downtrend if that's going to follow through. We have the metals, gold knocking on the door of all-time highs, some daily consolidation right now, but gold is comfortable in the sense that if we fail the all-time high, we will just be looking for a weekly higher low here as well. Silver has been weaker than gold. Bulls are hoping for one more leg up on silver to try and shape up an inverse head and shoulders. Oil pulled back from a very key level at 81. Bears will have to confirm a daily downtrend on oil if they're going to regain control in the short term. The energy sector is scouting a daily higher low. I'm on the weekly time frame for the energy sector. More clear for an equilibrium there, in my opinion. So patiently waiting for a weekly higher low to shape up and for a continued tightening range in energy. And natural gas, weakness to start the week. Trying to break the low of consolidation to see follow through on the weekly consolidation. But again, tons of space for a weekly higher low to be the result of this consolidation in natural gas. So the most significant volatility and risk and reward this week or early this week is going to obviously be in semiconductors, with NVDA getting the most attention. And NVDA pre-market was hitting the lowest levels in 4 months. And again, if you're going to do comparing, we need to be identifying where's relative strength, where's relative weakness. Look at the hourly bounce on NVDA and compare it to, say, Meta. They're very, very, very different. So Meta has a way stronger bounce than what NVDA is currently seeing. So NVDA at the moment is still a possible bear flag on the hourly. And so, again, it depends on whether you want to be aggressive or conservative with the names you're going to be looking at. You can look at a name like Netflix. Netflix is a potential 4-hour equilibrium following its bullish earnings reaction. All-time high, low of consolidation, 949, lower high, and now trying for that higher low compared to 949. And bulls are hoping that we just tighten up here. So there's less risk on something like Netflix in the sense that we got a base of support nearby. TEM is another name that's similar, and this was the Nancy Pelosi AI name that had a couple gap up opens last week after word got out that she bought. But again, just a clear support zone trying to hold to remain range bound. So again, looking at a name like Meta that has seen a significant bounce, this is the kind of name where, I'm not going to, if I'm a bull, I don't want to buy the open here. I want to wait to scout an hourly higher low to have better risk reward. Even if we see a spike right when the bell rings, I still want to wait for that hourly higher low, because the last thing I want to do is long right before we get hourly consolidation underway. So again, this is where extended hours levels are key. That low definitely matters to me. And the names that have bounced 50% plus retracement have a lot more space for hourly higher lows versus names that have not. Another name, OKLO, tying into things. How? It's uranium, uranium power needed for AI and all the computing power that's going to be required. And now, wait a second, maybe it doesn't require all that power, But this was a blue sky bull runner, increasing bull volume last week. Technically, it's an hourly back burner here, but we just have to keep in mind that back burners are not ideal when they are news related in terms of the reason that we're hitting oversold. But OKLO is definitely going to be looking for a daily higher low, anything above 2309. It's going to be very volatile as well. Just ensure that whatever trades you're taking, you've got your stop losses. Again, RSI levels can get extreme in scenarios like this. We can see things happen that we aren't expecting because of liquidations. So as always, just protect your trades, have your clear invalidation point. And it's just not the market environment where I want to be, just scaling into things and hoping things turn around without having a clear invalidation point that tells me I'm wrong. I want to know if I am wrong. And again, if you're looking to be high risk, high reward potential, you're looking at semis. And if you're looking to not have that much, you're looking elsewhere in the market because, again, there's plenty of pockets like XLF where, it's just another normal morning for XLF at the moment. One of the major things I'm watching when the bell rings is, does this weakness spread out? As we know, it's a clear signal to us when all major sectors hit the lows together. XLF, XLV, QQQ, if they're all hitting the low of the day together, it stands out to us as meaningful. And so a broader market bull watching today's trading is going to be paying attention. Does this fear, do liquidations spread out into other sectors where, hedge funds or whoever have to sell off other positions to cover maybe being underwater on semis or not? That's going to be an important piece of information that we get from today. And obviously the bulls want to see some of our major sectors holding on just fine and have this be specific to semis and the NASDAQ and not seep out. You don't want that fear to seep out into all the major sectors. So I will be observing that and letting you know what's going on after the bell rings. As far as quantum names, again, the weekly lower high was the most likely scenario, as we know, and we are getting gap down opens, and there's tons of space for hourly lower highs. A name like RGTI dropped straight from 1620 on Friday, and here we are trading way lower. So an aggressive bull is going to scout a bounce here, but a patient bear is going to wait for an hourly lower high. We dropped 27% straight down. Other names are a bit weaker on their weekly charts, like QUBT. It actually hasn't even gotten its weekly bounce going yet. QBTS is a bit weaker, looking for that weekly lower high. Would need to break 538 for it to be set. We're in the upper fives right now, so anticipating some continued volatility in the quantum names. But again, we know the most likely scenario on the longer term time frames. Just keep that in mind. As I mentioned in the weekend video, I was trying to play the RGTI 15-minute higher low Friday, and knowing that the weekly lower high was the most likely scenario led me to take a small, very small, insignificant loss on that attempt versus being stubborn and trying to continue, building a position. The weekly tightening range is most likely for that sector. One more name to point out here, and then I'm going to take some requests from Chart Guys members. Apple. So Apple has relative strength this morning after having relative weakness for weeks. We know Apple's been dropping straight down while the NASDAQ has been just fine, aside from today. And we are seeing the bulls just fine. So we're keeping an eye out. Did, Apple get all of its downside out of the way? Keeping in mind earnings are on Thursday. But can bulls hold the 219 support zone and try and negate a daily bear flag? The most important resistance is 227.03. So again, just looking around pre-market, we can see this is an area where there is relative strength. So that's, if you want to be a more conservative bull and you're not looking to the semis this morning, something like Apple is an alternative to attempt that bounce. So looking at futures one more time here. 15-minute was in a bunch of stair steps now. So again, we're watching for an hourly lower high. It's just a question of, do we set this hourly lower high right into the open, or can bulls get a bit more upside? Then hourly EMA 12 will be in play. But again, we know hourly lower highs are the most likely scenario on a bunch of names at this point. All right. So So Apple was a request, just went over that. Short-term resistance on Apple, again, that 227 level is the most important on the daily chart. But first thing here, 223.05 is a little level from the end of Friday. So keeping an eye on that. And again, possible we just remain within a sideways range for a bit if we're unable to break 227. So got to keep that in mind as well. And again, any swing trades that you have on this week, just remember that even if your name is not reporting, it's possible that peers in the same sector will report and see a significant extended hours reaction as well. ARKG, gap down open. Megaphone type of pattern in the sense that the resistance break saw zero follow through and not even really a great resistance break just because this is a big time zone. I'd call that a resistance rejection. Look at all these tops. Man, that is beautiful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bunch of tops. So another rejection. We're looking for a daily higher low. There's a little support level, 26.17. We're going to test that first thing. Then we got a gap fill, 26.06. So again, the most likely scenario is a daily higher low compared to where we came from, but we are still very much range bound, which has been the case for 9 months at this point. And so eventually we'll break this sideways range, but certainly not yet. And bulls, again, watch that retracement size on daily consolidation. Bulls want less than 50%. Tesla. So Tesla's earnings are going to determine whether this is a weekly bull flag to all-time highs or a confirmed weekly downtrend into monthly consolidation. The weekly inside bar from last week is breaking bear. We know an hourly lower high is the most likely scenario, same as tons of names. And we are still a good bit above our base of support in the 370s, 377, 373. So there's our support zone. Look at the low of pre-market right off that support zone. But again, I don't have conviction on Tesla in this current setup. If we didn't have earnings in play, maybe I'd make a play off of the 370s if we drop down to the 380s, you know. But again, just knowing that earnings are Wednesday and knowing I don't want any exposure for that coin flip because it's a very clear fork in the road where, you know, monthly consolidation or all-time highs, very big difference, of course. This one for me is I just sit on the sidelines, watch the earnings reaction, and patiently wait for a setup that I like better. But weekly inside bar bear break is coming to start the week first thing. So NVDA, again, it's a potential hourly bear flag at this point. Already topping out, so now we have our resistance level. Multiple tops pre-market here. So it's showing us this is the short-term most important level, 127.77, 127.68. Bears are playing defense there, and the bulls are going to try and play defense in the 120s. I should say, get more specific, the 122s. We have, again, this is the pre-market levels that I just marked, and you can see one was a prior support zone. It's now acting as resistance, and we are hitting levels that we have not seen in a while. And so we've got some upper wicks here. Again, a lack of, well, no, there's clarity now. We got a weekly downtrend back in play. Monthly EMA 12 is down in the 1-teens, 115, 116 when the bell rings to start the week. But again, you know, I expect it to have some relative weakness just because it's at the center of attention right now. And, you know, if you're looking longer term and saying this is an overreaction, you just got to keep in mind the time frame that matters most to you, because it's possible that we stay weaker today and have relative weakness compared to other names highlighted, but maybe it's still a good buying opportunity if we look back a month in the future from now. So just be clear with yourself, and still that doesn't mean don't have a stop. You know, you can not care if 122.75 breaks on the morning, but you've got to have a level that tells you, nope, I was wrong, just in case. Again, liquidations, got to be aware that is the setup is there for liquidations to be in play because of the bullish backdrop into this sucker punch headline. OKLO we already looked at. So again, aggressive bulls are going to be watching for an hourly oversold bounce. Same thing, tons of space for an hourly lower high. It's still an hourly stair step, all pre-market at this point. 5-minute EMA 12, a bit of a guide in the short term. If I were going to be playing the gap down and trying to buy OKLO, I would want to be having a clear level where I say that's either the low of the morning or I'm wrong. Give a little wiggle room, buy it. But again, not the kind of setup where I want to just be scaling in without an invalidation point. MSTR, so down with the Bitcoin drop. Daily pullback here. Again, weekly lower high. Well, I don't love the clarity on the weekly here. Where are we at? Gap down open. Tons of space for an hourly lower high. Anything under the upper 370s. Low pre-market is support, 325.33. So again, if I'm looking long, obviously I'm watching Bitcoin. Bitcoin's watching for a potential 4-hour lower high to be the result of this bounce. Bulls would love to hold a back test of 100,000 here and see a continuation once the bell rings. If that were to happen, we would look for MSTR to get another leg up. Again, if you're a conservative bull, you're hoping for a little spike on the open to give you the space to eventually scout the hourly high or low. But it's definitely tracking Bitcoin a good bit on the 15-minute time frame here pre-market. BE, we'll check back in on the indices right before the bell rings. So BE had a significant bull break last week. Pre-market, big gap down. So again, I assume this AI energy narrative is in play. Any energy name that's down big this morning is tied to the AI energy narrative. So we're trading at 24.75 at the moment. 24.55 is a little daily higher low from the end of last week. And bigger picture, bulls just want to keep holding weekly EMA 12. And so that's going to be in play as well. This is going to be a resistance rejection from the low 30s. And we are getting to hourly oversold. It'll be extremely telling any names that confirm hourly downtrends. So OKLO, BE, even if we see further weakness when the bell rings, we know eventually we're going to get an hourly bounce. And if that hourly bounce goes 50% plus retracement, we know that the bulls are feeling safe on that bounce. But if we confirm an hourly downtrend as a result of the next hourly bounce, that will tell us that this is potentially not just limited to one day. So, just like a sucker punch low reaction, and if you don't know what a sucker punch is, Google chart guys sucker punch later on down the line. But we essentially, bulls want to see a sucker punch low found, and then you hold that from here on out. You want to set that extreme fear low as soon as possible and then just not break it from that point forward. And so names that confirm hourly downtrends after we get some bounce relief, that'll be very telling for bear control. So Meta, I've been watching this weekly head and shoulders. Nope, weekly rising wedge, because the 3-month time frame has gone straight up 600+% over the last however long. And now we have a decent pullback, but again, decent bounce. Earnings are going to dictate things here as to whether or not this is a weekly rising wedge or not. And I've laid out a game plan where if we see a bullish earnings reaction, I am going to attempt a top fish short after the reaction happens. But I'm going to be patiently waiting for the earnings reaction Wednesday. So the question is, again, at least on the hourly lower high set. So we have a resistance level now, 639.40. We're looking for an hourly higher low compared to 606 because we had a significant bounce. So we'll be watching for something like that. But question is, am I scouting any other longer term consolidation? And I went over this in the last long-term pattern video that I did, which is on our YouTube. But I talked about how I was looking for an XLV, monthly head and shoulders, for yearly consolidation. But there's not a ton of stair steps on the 3-month time frame to the magnitude that Meta currently has. Roku. So Roku range bound as well. We had resistance at 84.92, and we topped out at that level to end last week. We got a gap down open, so that's a resistance rejection. We've got a clear support zone. I mean, just draw your channels. It's just a very clear channel, and we're looking for 74.14 as support. We're still well above that support level, and we can definitely remain range bound for a lot of the week. Hourly is going to be our guide. We know an hourly lower high is the most likely result of this bounce. The low of pre-market, 77.37, is a short-term support level. But what matters most is that channel. And you can view this as an equilibrium. Bulls hoping for a higher low to remain tightening up. All right, one more, and then we'll get ready for the open. DKS, big bull move last week. Continuation, weekly bull flag confirmed. Lower open shaping up, not much volume to really gauge what's going on pre-market, but if we get the bear break of 245.56, we know daily consolidation is underway. We watch for first hourly oversold conditions to try and mark a daily higher low. So it's all about low of Friday first, but again, there's tons of space for a daily higher low. And so a setup like that makes bulls certainly more comfortable when you've got the daily higher low as the most likely scenario in your favor. And so we'll have to see. Again, pre-market, we don't really get much insight at all because there is no volume. But we'll see if we head towards hourly oversold to start this week. Is that blue sky? Yeah, all-time highs. All right, back to the indices. And I can use QQQ now just because what I care about is the low of pre-market and the high of the bounce, and those levels are on QQQ. I don't have to go to the futures charts to see things that happened until we break one of those. But again, wouldn't be surprised to just see a little equilibrium here, at least to start the morning. 50% plus bounce retracement from the levels that have been hit in pre-market. Is this an hourly lower high shaping up real quick? We'll know in the first 15 minutes or so. And again, watching closely, SMH, of course, in the semis. But what's most important for me from a more zoomed out perspective is, does this fear and weakness permeate the other major sectors, or does it stay contained? Just imagining it like a virus. Does it stay contained to semis, or does it spread? All right, one more. Jets. So I've been watching Jets to be a potential daily rising wedge. And we had a bullish earnings reaction that sold off, which is essentially what I'd be looking for on my meta short attempt if I'm going to get the setup that I want. Double top the last 2 days, 26.51. We're going to be opening near support of 25.99. And again, aggressive bears are looking to position sooner rather than later. I was looking for the possibility of a right shoulder to look short. And if I'm going to stay picky, then I'm going to wait for that. And if it doesn't come, then it doesn't come. But it all depends on whether you want to be aggressive or conservative. And the hope for a bear would be that if that daily rising wedge confirms that it's a rejection from this longer-term resistance, and that monthly consolidation could potentially be a result, considering we just ran 60+% straight up on the monthly over the last 5 months. All right, I got to log into my account. Again, I don't have anything, because I'm not going aggressive this morning, I'm not itching to jump into anything first thing. If I were in aggressive mode, I would be scouting OKLO for an hourly bounce. Again, needing a level to play off of as support, or potentially RGTI, just because I've been very comfortable trading that name in both directions the last month or so. But here's NVDA with that relative weakness pre-market still following through. And we're going to test that low, 122.75. Key level first thing. Look at Apple continue its relative strength. So Apple is now at pre-market high while the NASDAQ is dropping. So let's see if that Apple relative strength can shine through 225.63, high of Friday, very important short-term resistance. I'll get back to the rest of the ticker requests after a bit of morning action. Bring on the bell. Not going to be doing much of anything else with my hedges, as again, I mentioned I took a third of the NASDAQ off and going to let things play out a bit. Keep the protection on to stay protected. QQQ bulls want to break the pre-market high of 512.21. There's Apple going for the high of Friday first thing. Again, the only green name on my screen, healthcare and Apple. OKLO down 24% from all-time highs. So NVDA staying weak, hitting the low of the day. Apple staying strong. Apple bulls definitely want a more clear break of the high of Friday. Actually, we haven't broken it yet. 13 pennies here. Bulls want to get over 226 to have a bit more confidence. NVDA just dropped right down towards the low pre-market. Didn't break it. Now back to the high of the day. Apple over the high. QQQ is at the high of pre-market, so the hourly bounce is still underway. We haven't set the hourly lower high yet. Financial sector just fine. Healthcare sector just fine. Good sign for the bigger picture bulls. OKLO, that needs to be the low of the day. Very quick bounce there. Same thing with RGTI. That needs to be the low of the day. Apple next resistance. Looking at the bounce high, 227.03 from last week. Quickly coming into play. And again, if you are an aggressive bull and you're playing that OKLO bounce, you're definitely taking partial off to get your break even as close to the low of the day as possible. But if you bounce 7% in 2 minutes, you should take a little off. XLF is now dropping a bit. So watching to see if XLF and QQQ go inverse, as QQQ is still at the high of the day. Here's that Apple key resistance test. Tesla's got 400 psychological resistance as a battleground at the moment. So NVDA did give bulls a level to play off of with that pre-market low holding by less than $1, and now we're breaking that, attempting to break that pre-market high resistance zone in the 127s here. Initial rejection. Again, we got to watch this pre-market zone very closely. Apple pulling back just under daily resistance initially. NVDA did get over that hurdle. NVDA is a 1-minute stair step at the moment. And we're going to be paying a lot of attention to NVDA on the morning, obviously, because that's going to play a significant role in what the NASDAQ is doing. Apple going for another attempt at that 227 resistance. So again, we're not going to forget that hourly lower highs are the most likely scenario on a bunch of these names. So here's QQQ. We're going to watch the high of the pre-market drop in the 517s, but 5-minute RSI hit overbought there. Bulls just want to hold that low of the day. For so many individual names, if you bounce like that first thing, you've got to hold that low of the day from here to just keep that morning control. OKLO quickly pulling back towards the low of the day after a very fast 7% bounce. Gotta stay protective when it's counter trend. XLV staying the lead bull sector. XLF near the low of the day. Broader market bulls really want to see XLF bounce back into the mid 50 80s if QQQ starts pulling back. Checking in on Bitcoin's reaction to the open. We're battling the bounce high from pre-market on Bitcoin. Little spike up first thing, but still resistance. Clear 15-minute short-term range to be watching. XLF back to the 580s as QQQ is pulling back. So again, bulls want to see that inverse action. Many times we start the first 15 minutes very clearly inverse and then it starts to shift a bit. So we'll see which direction it shifts. Energy sector continues to pull back. It's been weakening through the open. So no sign of a daily high or low in energy at the moment. QQQ high of the day test. So just like that, our inverse relationship with XLF and QQQ is shifting a bit. How? QQQ is trying to test the high of the day. XLF is not testing the low. It's testing the high as well. Which again is what bulls want to see. OKLO looks like we held the low of the day. Back to very volatile name. But held the low of the day, trying to get back to the high. We actually broke the low by a couple pennies, but 2 pennies is a double bottom. Potential for a little 1-minute equilibrium on OKLO. If we fail the high of the day, we're going to look for something like this. Apple trying again. NVDA pulling back. Let's check in on NVDA short term. Didn't confirm a 1-minute uptrend, so we had a 1-minute big bounce. I'm on the 2-minute for clarity now. Can the bulls form a 2-minute high or low? Again, the low of the day is a must-hold level. Essentially for me, the morning is just starting real zoomed in, and then one by one zooming out time frames. By the time we get to 10:45, 11 a.m., I'm usually on the 15-minute charts. But for now, it's the 2-minute. Apple bears are definitely defending 227. So QQQ is testing the high of the day. Apple is not. NVDA certainly is not. So where is that strength coming from? Microsoft's at the high of the day. Tesla's up at the high, breaking over that 400 psychological. OKLO giving us that tightening range. Fail the high of the day. Double bottom, almost a double top. Equilibriums and volatility. Very often the most likely scenario. Request for Ripple. We've got a bear break on the daily, so weekly consolidation underway, but tons of space for a weekly higher low. 4 hour, we're looking for a lower high to be the result of the current bounce. Bulls are hoping for 50% plus retracement to create the space for an eventual trend change attempt. 15-minute uptrend is our guide as to when the 4 hour lower high is shaping up. But weekly chart still just fine there for bulls. So bulls obviously in the NASDAQ want to confirm a 5-minute uptrend during regular trading hours next time we consolidate. And again, at the moment, the fear is definitely contained still. It is not hitting our other major sectors. We can see the advanced decliners here in the NYSE. Red and green is even at the moment. The biggest, most meaningful drops are when all major sectors are dropping together. XLF now back to a low of the day test as QQQ is still near the highs. A lot of volatility in XLF between its current range on the day. Also just be aware that XLF daily consolidation is going to be due here. We just went straight up. So I definitely wouldn't be long XLF from a daily perspective at these levels. Riot, I've been watching this weekly downtrend, which rejected the price yet again. If you want, you can also draw a weekly uptrend line. But bears in control at the lows. We look for a 5-minute lower high next bounce. Next support is 1193. But very much range bound on the weekly and clearly rejecting from resistance for a long time. And burden certainly on bulls there. OKLO got another leg up. Very quick 8%, 9% bounce. RGTI's bounce much less impressive. Apple breaking daily resistance. Definitely want a bit of follow through. New short-term support. Again, watch that 2-minute chart on Apple. So 2-minute key now, 225.35. Gap to fill, 228.48 is the next level. And bulls just want to hold that 2-minute uptrend as long as they can. NVDA right now is fading back towards the low, giving back more than half of the initial morning spike up. This is where bears are scouting hourly lower highs. K-Web. So Chinese name, gap up open into profit taking. We'll call anything above the low of Friday as an hourly higher low. Bigger picture, I'm going to be keeping an eye out for the possibility of an inverse head and shoulders attempt on the weekly to try and shape up a monthly higher low. But for now, we've got a little daily uptrend and an hourly uptrend with some gap up profit taking. So bulls have proven to do on the longer term time frames, but bulls are in control of the shorter term in terms of the daily and the hourly. QQQ still keeping it together. 5-minute stair steps since the open. Let's zoom in on QQQ's 2-minute. So a little, you could even be on the 1-minute still. Just a clear little uptrend. Potential 1-minute rising wedge shaping up. Could shape up 5-minute consolidation. Bull break straight into consolidation. Bull break straight into consolidation. That's when we start scouting those rising wedges. So we'll keep an eye on that over the next 5+ minutes. OKLO still at the highs. Again, anybody trading OKLO, definitely risk-free at this point. RGTI did get another leg up. NVNI request. Daily inside bar, very likely. I'd be watching for a potential 4-hour equilibrium. Bulls need to confirm a 15-minute uptrend to be shaping up that 4-hour higher low, and then we would scout a 4-hour lower high. NVDA is giving us a tightening range. Two-minute equilibrium watch here. Low of the day. High of the day, 50% plus retracement. If we fail the high of the day, we look for something like that. Just a version of what OKLO gave us. OKLO gave it on the 1-minute time frame, and now potentially NVDA on the 2-minute. If we're going to break resistance, we'll need to see a spike in volume. Otherwise, we tighten up. NASDAQ new high of the day. We're going to keep an eye on this 1-minute. Apple's got a potential 1-minute rising wedge shaping up as well. Just keep in mind, a 1-minute rising wedge just means you zoom out and look for a 5-minute high or low attempt. When do liquidations at brokers occur? We're not worried about liquidations with the bounce on the morning. If we were, dropping hard at the open, then that's definitely a factor. But we would need to break lows of pre-market for those to be a concern, or not lows of the day, for liquidations to be of concern. There's your 2-minute lower high on NVDA. Now we scout the high or low. Direction this breaks is definitely going to be important on the morning. Quantum names getting a bit more follow through on the bounce now. RGTI up $1 from the low. So both worked out, RGTI and OKLO for the aggressive. Again, both should be risk-free. One-minute rising wedge trying to confirm. Still a 1-minute uptrend on QQQ. Bulls don't have anything to worry about if 1-minute EMA 12 is support. Eventually, we'll get 5-minute consolidation and we will zoom out and watch for a 5-minute higher low attempt, watching retracement size. Could also just tweak my visual guides here a bit. For me, trend lines are just visual guides. So Chinese names selling off a bit from their pre-market strength. CELH, clear daily downtrend. Anything under 28.37 is just a lower high. And we are in a big drop. Monthly, not quite a stair step by a few pennies in there, but clear weekly and daily downtrend. Simple statement. If weekly EMA 12 is resistance, absolutely nothing is changing from full bear control. And we need a daily uptrend, get over weekly EMA 12, otherwise nothing is shifting. Apple still looking good. Again, it's got a 1-minute rising wedge as well, but that just means 5-minute consolidation to scout a 5-minute higher low eventually. Sooner rather than later. A lot of space for a 5-minute higher low. Two-minute higher low set on NVDA. We keep tightening up. Once this breaks, we'll zoom out to the 5-minute. AVGO. Big gap down. Bulls really want to get back over this previous support zone to see a lack of acceptance under it. Bears would love to see a back test and rejection into further gap fill. There's a lot of gap fill down there under 210.55. 5-minute lower high set. Bulls need to confirm the 5-minute uptrend. If they fail, then we're looking at the low of pre-market. So essentially we have the low of pre-market, hourly lower high set at 219.65, and now bulls are trying to hold the low of pre-market. But for me on the daily perspective, it's all about where we close in relation to the 217 to 219 previous support zone. And we're just battling that level to start the day. QQQ still hanging on. So all in all, this is the best start to the morning that bulls could hope for, just in the sense that, it's a 5-minute stair step. We're not back to testing lows of pre-market. Fears being alleviated a bit. IWM just went green. T, big gap open on earnings. So a little monthly bull flag confirmed. Bulls want to hold the low of the day for a 5-minute higher low here. Eventually, we know we're going to be looking for hourly consolidation with a lot of space for an hourly higher low, but the 5-minute uptrend is our guide in the meantime. And we are back to all-time highs. That was a nice back test and hold of previous resistance, now support. NVDA is going to break this 2-minute equilibrium within the next 5 minutes or so. PLTR, just fine. Again, stair step move, retracement at this point, not significant. Just looking for a daily higher low. Bulls bouncing on the morning. Again, there's plenty of space for an hourly lower high, but no red flags on the daily chart at this point. Apple broke its 1-minute stair or 1-minute rising wedge bear, so 5-minute consolidation underway. Zoom out, 5-minute. Bulls must form a 5-minute higher low. Again, we're not going to forget many names, hourly lower high on watch, but Apple is different. It is not looking for an hourly lower high. But QQQ is. Snap. Bulls buying the dip. A nice bullish engulfing candle very quickly. That's some decent dip buying. I'm still viewing this as the same bounce, meaning I would be viewing anything under 1235 as a daily lower high. Plenty of space for a 5-minute higher low next consolidation. All things considered, bulls very pleased with how the morning is going. Note the last 3 opens. The low of the day was right at the open. Bulls bought all morning, last 3 days. A little choppy on the weekly chart. Looks a bit like a megaphone. Viewing more of this action. And earnings next week. Stair steps here. So an aggressive bear shorting the stair step break at 226.98. If you're out half right now, you're risk-free. Stop over the high of the day. NVDA real tight break imminent. You can see the NASDAQ is ignoring the Apple consolidation at the moment. That's because Microsoft's at the high of the day. Amazon's at the high. XLF is back to the middle of its range on the day. It's just chopping around, staying fairly flat. curious if I'm going to give futures a try in 2025. I already did. I made videos about it. I gave futures a try. I forget when, probably 2023. But it's just not for me. If I'm achieving all of my goals elsewhere, what is the incentive to try something new? That's my mindset. And, you know, I've had a great start to 2025. Quantum stocks gave me a third of my annual day trading goal in 2 weeks. So I'm just going to keep doing what's working. But yeah, there's a video out there on YouTube of me playing around, giving my feedback. I was using TDA. Still tight on NVDA. 2-minute breaking bear. So I go to the 5-minute, and now I'm viewing a 5-minute equilibrium. Oftentimes, shorter term equilibriums go into longer term ones. So I'd be viewing anything over 125.15 as a 5-minute high or low. Apple's continuing to weaken. Very stark shift from relative strength to relative weakness. You can see we've given back from the open. We've given back far more than half. So we are creating space for a 5-minute lower high next bounce. SERV, testing support. Support zone, we'll just call it 17, little above, little below. I'm watching this uptrending resistance line. Resistance will be from pre-market 1840. Bulls need to gain a 5-minute uptrend. We got a little 2-minute inverse head and shoulders trying to shape up. So if we fail this resistance, 1768, we'll look for a 2-minute high or low. But need these short-term uptrends to confirm if we're going to hold that 17 base. Do I view NVDA monthly as a downtrend? No. I view it as a bull flag confirming with zero follow-through, a double top. I mean, we double topped. I mean, I wouldn't argue with someone that says that's a downtrend. But for me, it's not really a clear enough pivot for me to call that a monthly lower high and lower low. But anytime you confirm a bull flag with zero follow-through, it's definitely a red flag. And of course, a double top, not ideal. We had a weekly downtrend. We broke bull. We never confirmed a weekly uptrend, and now we've resumed a weekly downtrend. So again, now the 5-minute on NVDA can tighten up for another 30 plus minutes here if we just do something like this. See all the equilibriums? When you get volatility, we had a 1-minute on OKLO. We had a 2-minute on, what was it, NVDA? Apple. And now we got a 5-minute. And you better believe we're going to be looking at some hourly equilibriums, including extended hours, later on down the day. 5-minute stair-step bear break on the NASDAQ. So now we scout a 5-minute high or low. We watch the retracement size. Bulls don't want to give back more than half. If we give back more than half, potential that an hourly lower high is shaping up. XLF, new high of the day. Not by much, but RGTI still at the highs, almost a full recovery. Let's check in on RGTI. Is it still a 5-minute stair step? Yep. Gap filled. Nope. Gap fill is 13.15. 2-minute EMA 12 is a nice guide on this morning move. So now we scout the NVDA 5-minute higher low compared to 125.15. New home sales data just came out. Thanks for the heads up. Doesn't seem like a big reaction. Is MSTR looking for a daily higher low? I would say we lost the daily higher low with the break of 345.80. If you want to condense it to the 2-day, that's fine. We're looking for a 2-day higher low. Checking back in on Bitcoin's 15-minute tightening range. Broke bull, good sign. So nice 4-hour bounce, 50% plus retracement. So we're still going to scout a lower high, but we've got space now for a 4-hour higher low to try and form next consolidation. TEM did have a big bounce from that support zone. Just love those sideways channels when you have clearly defined multiple resistance levels, multiple supports. CEG. That's a big old gap down. Support zone is 278.86 before gap fill. Bulls really want to hold that zone. 5-minute downtrend, EMA 12 resistance. We would need to hold the low of the day and break 292.69 for bulls to do anything in the short term. So key daily support test, and if it fails, gap fills a ways down 256. Again, another big gap down energy name. OKLO faring better. Very minimal consolidation on QQQ's 5-minute at the moment. Potential little bull flag. Amazon still at the high. Netflix trying to make it back to the high. Netflix 4-hour equilibrium that we were talking about is looking good. New high of the day, definitely ideal for bulls, but a tightening range that'll probably break later this week. NVDA bear break on the 5-minute. That definitely stands out. Now we go to the 15-minute. All about the low of the day. You can see the increasing bear volume this candle to lead to that break. Equilibriums generally are declining volume as we tighten up. Let's check other semis. So SMH, very similar to NVDA, of course. MU, low of the day test. AMD holding on a bit better. ARM is holding on better on the 5-minute, just meaning from the open. But again, we knew where the biggest battle was going to be for bulls, and it is still semiconductors. Decent recovery in energy back towards the high of the day. Again, look at the advanced decliners. 60% of the NYSE is green. So in terms of the dump, it is still isolated. V-shaped bounce on energy. Could this be the daily higher low trying to form? We got to confirm an hourly uptrend eventually, but solid initial response. Meta followed through with its big old bounce. So one thing the bulls like, again, the fact that the weakness is contained for the most part to the semis at the moment. Fact that Apple is a solid green day and Meta's trying to get back to flat. XLV strong, XLF flat. Nice bounce in the biotech sector with healthcare's strength. Let's check that daily. Bull break on the daily. Testing resistance of 94.40, but over the high of Friday. Contained is the word of the morning. What's happened in the last 2 hours, well, more including futures, but it's just, honestly, it's what's been happening. It's a mini version of what's been happening for months. Remember, semiconductors led the way of the bull market the last couple years. Then they did nothing for months. And while they did nothing from October to January, XLF was going up to new all-time highs. XLV wasn't doing much, but energy went up to new all-time highs. So there was rotation from semis, the leaders of the move, to these other places. IWM hit a new all-time high during that period. And so we're just seeing a smaller version of that at the moment. BILL. Weekly resistance coming into play. Nice bounce off EMA 12. We're looking at 97.86. Bullish engulfing candle trying to form. Bulls buying the gap down. Have we confirmed a 5-minute uptrend? Not yet. It's a potential 5-minute bull flag. So overall, still just fine for the bulls. And resistance is in play. And low of today is now a key short-term support on the daily. NVDA is still near the lows. Bulls are loving the fact that QQQ is still hanging near the highs while that is happening. So the aggressive bounce traders are ideally risk-free. Patient bears still waiting for hourly lower highs in a number of places. And patient bulls that didn't act initially on the morning, they are going to be looking for hourly higher lows eventually, whether that's on QQQ or Apple. Tons of space for an hourly higher low compared to where we came from. But we've gotten a good glimpse of relative strength and relative weakness. Obviously not surprising that NVDA and semis are leading the weakness. Low of the day test approaching on NVDA. Apple, I'd be on the 15-minute at this point. We're looking for a 15-minute higher low. So NVDA, we got two important levels here. We got the low of the day, and then we've got the low of pre-market. What you guys are looking at on the screen isn't a screener. It's just Fidelity Active Trader Pro. It's my platform that I trade from and more of a bird's eye view of the market where I watch the major sectors and the major names at the same time. Helps me identify correlations quickly by watching how things are trading next to each other. NVDA, battle at the low. Double bottom at the moment, but bulls would need a solid bounce back towards 125 if that's going to be believable. And obviously the NASDAQ's not going to be immune to semiconductor weakness. It is going to drag on it. NVDA 122.75. Potential trade at this point is bulls. You know, if I'm looking long NVDA, I want the lower pre-market to break with no follow through and look for that to be a long entry. Keeping in mind there's a lot of space for a 5-minute lower high to be the result of the next bounce. But obviously through the morning, you know, the clear takeaway has been playing the relative strength long has been the place to be. 3% plus bounce on Meta. Apple had a couple percent. OKLO giving a lot back. Low of the day test there. So now we need to be paying attention. OKLO is likely going to correlate to NVDA for a while, and that correlation will fade, but definitely when we get new narratives, new correlations form for at least short periods of time. Tesla with a decent pullback from the high. 5-minute stair step up, stair step down. Apple still working on the 15-minute higher low attempt. Tesla bears would have to confirm a 5-minute downtrend for the hourly lower high to be shaping up. Again, we know that's the most likely scenario, is an hourly lower high on tons of these names. Keep repeating it because you can get caught up on the short-term time frames and forget the most likely scenario on the longer-term ones. Another quick check-in on crypto. So Bitcoin, again, 15-minute uptrend is our guide as we scout a 4-hour lower high. We're rejecting right off EMA 12 initially. XLM has a little relative strength since the last time I looked. Again, I just sort my watch list from strongest to weakest, and if I see, SUI is minus 1.5% mixed in with 3s and 5s, I know that it has strengthened since I last looked at my list. Same thing with XLM down here, sandwiched in between 3s, minus 3%ers. So NVDA is now a battle for the low of pre-market. If I am going to exit any more hedge, it would be a little bit of SPXS, and it would be on SPY hourly consolidation is when I would do it. Haven't yet decided. Depends on how the major sectors continue to trade. If XLF and XLV remain just fine, then I am more likely to trim some of that hedge. So Apple, 15-minute. We just need a couple pennies here. Come on. 15-minute higher low set. That's now 224.82 key short-term support. QQQ just fine. Again, it's Amazon, Meta, and Apple that are leading to the NASDAQ holding near its high of the day while NVDA and semis test the low. All major sectors are near their high of the day at the same time. So another thing I'll be watching for later on down the line is when NVDA does get another meaningful bounce going, does that lead to Apple, Apple, Amazon, Meta do they go inverse to the semis? Do they start hourly pulling back while NVDA gets a bounce going? Again, I always want to know what the relationships are. Apple's relationship to the NASDAQ the last year to year and a half is the most unique I've seen in the last 5 to 6 years. A lot of that has been due to Buffett selling and throwing off correlations. So again, checking back in, bigger picture, zoomed out, bulls are A-okay with how this morning is going. Again, SPY, are there any major red flags on this chart? Let's go to futures. Any major red flags on this chart? I mean, we're aware of the double top. We're aware of a major resistance zone. We pulled back more than the bulls want to see in terms of 50% plus retracement, but overall, no major red flags. We would have to see XLF and XLV significantly weaken with the NASDAQ for that to change. And again, the NASDAQ, it's still going to be all about that low, which is a clear base. NVDA held the low of pre-market, 5-minute bounce underway. Netflix is green now. Meta's on the verge of green. Bulls are breathing a sigh of relief. Already looked at T, 5-minute higher low set. Potential for a tightening range, but key short-term support 2380 now. Again, just like Apple, give us that 15-minute higher low. And that is now the most important level. Short-term. NASDAQ high of the day test. XLF is not testing the low. Good sign for bulls. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, even though everything's fine for SPY and QQQ, since the bell rang, we know an hourly lower high is the most likely scenario eventually. We know an hourly higher low, due to the magnitude of the bounce from pre-market, will then be the most likely scenario from there. We're watching NVDA and semis as the lead bears, knowing that bulls are positioned well in the NASDAQ if semis can find some kind of more meaningful bottom. We've got our clear NASDAQ leaders in Apple and Meta. And the next big check mark for the bulls will be confirming hourly uptrends. We have a fear low now from a headline sucker punch from the lows of pre-market, and those are now the most important support levels for this week. QQQ little bull flag confirmed, so its new key short-term support level is going to be 513.40. We won't set an hourly lower high as long as that level is holding. And And we'll continue to take it one day at a time with FOMC Wednesday and big earnings Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But all things considered, from the open to now in 1 hour of trading, bulls will take it. That's for sure. All right. Appreciate you all tuning in. I'll see you on Twitter and YouTube elsewhere. Otherwise, Chart Guys members, back to the chat room.